What's going on, everybody? It's AG here. So today we're going to be discussing my Big 12 teams that can make the college football playoff. I think there are two teams in particular that are head and shoulders above everybody else, but I've got about 8 teams on this list. We're going to discuss the teams I think can make the college football playoff, and then I asked you guys, who do you think can make the college football playoff? We've got about 50 or so comments on that, so we'll take a look at that as well once we're done with all mine. So with that being said, these are in no particular order. I've got these in alphabetical order. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, first off here, we've got Arizona. All right, coming over from the Pac-12. All right, new look Big 12. Oklahoma and Texas are gone. Really, the Big 12 is fairly up for grabs this season. Arizona, pretty good season last year. All right, they've got Noah Fafita back at quarterback. You got McMillan back at receiver. He's an All-American type candidate, arguably the best receiver in the country. But they have some roster turnover and coaching turnover. So if they had the same coaching staff coming back, if they still had Jeb Fish, I'd probably have them clearly in the top 3. Like, they'd definitely be a contender to win it. Right now, I've kind of got some question marks on them because, yes, they have the roster coming back, but with the new coaching staff coming over, they've got Brennan from San Jose State coming over. How is that going to mesh with the team they have? You know, sometimes it'll work, sometimes it doesn't. So I've got them at like number 5 right now, but they could go up or down either way. But their toughest games this season at Kansas State. All right, we'll talk about them. We'll talk about each one of these teams later, actually. At Kansas State, at Utah, and West Virginia. So not the easiest schedule by any means. There's really not any Big 12 teams that completely avoid a tough schedule. Like, everybody's got to play everybody, so it's going to be pretty interesting. You're probably not going to have any teams that just go undefeated, you know. Next up, Iowa State. All right, Matt Campbell, always good for, 6, 7, 8 wins, somewhere in that range. Now, they return pretty much their entire roster from last year, and they'll probably return them again next year. This is a young roster. All right, they've got Rocco Begg back at quarterback. They also return their leading rusher, leading receiver. So they've got a ton back, all right? So no reason this team can't take a step forward, a leap forward, because the Big 12 is, like I said, wide open. But toughest games they play at Iowa, so we're going to know a lot about them pretty early when they play Iowa. That's always a rivalry game regardless, so, I mean, it's going to be tough no matter how good Iowa is. But Iowa should be a top 25 team once again. I know their offense has question marks, but Iowa has a chance to make the playoff, believe it or not. So that's going to definitely tell you a lot about Iowa State really quick. At Utah, all right, Utah we'll talk about again, like I said, and then Kansas State. Next up, Kansas. All right, Kansas. All right, Lance Leipold's done a really good job there. You've got Daniels back at quarterback. Now, he didn't really play last year because Jason Bean took over for him once he got hurt. That's kind of been the issue with Daniels. He gets hurt a lot. All right, he's really impressive when he is in, but he has so many injuries, like it's hard to rely on him throughout the season. So, like I said, last season, even though they were really pretty good, it wasn't really due to him. It was due to Jason Bean because that's who they had, They've got a good running back and Neal coming back. So they're going to be good offensively. Defensively, how are they going to look? Excuse me. But it's all going to come down to the health of the quarterback play, in my opinion. Like, that's kind of what separates them. That's kind of why I can't believe in him, because unfortunately, I can't believe that he's going to last the whole season. But toughest games at West Virginia, at Kansas State, and Iowa State. So like I said, everybody plays everybody for the most part, and all these teams are going to have a loss or two, most likely. All right, Kansas State, I think they are the betting favorite right now as far as odds are concerned. They lose Will Howard. You got Avery Johnson back at quarterback. Chris Kleiman is back. All right, Oklahoma State, at West Virginia, at Iowa State. Not an easy schedule. All right, Oklahoma State's going to be tough. The real question mark with them is, again, quarterback play. Similar to Kansas, except different scenario. You lose Will Howard. Avery Johnson looked pretty good in spot duty last year, but it's different coming in and being in spot duty than being the actual dude. So how is he going to look this season? All right, next up, Oklahoma State. So this is personally my favorite right now to win the conference. Toughest games, Utah, at Kansas State, West Virginia. Backtrack to last year. All right, really kind of a up and down season. Looked really good at times, looked really bad at times. Like, they lost to South Alabama at home. They got, I think UCF just abused them. But with all that being said, they still made the Big 12 championship. So they're the only team on this list that can say that. Or in the Big 12 that can say that, frankly, because Texas is gone. But they return a lot of their roster from last year. Ollie Gordon in particular, despite what issues he's got going on right now, he is going to put up Heisman level production, Doak Walker level production, All-American level production. Got their quarterback back, Alan Bowman. They got a receiver back as well. And their offense is going to be talented defensively. They've got some linebackers coming back. Their defense should be pretty good. I think Mike Gundy is one of, if not the most underrated coaches in the country. I think Oklahoma State wins this conference, but they're going to have to be a lot more consistent than they were last season. That's for sure. All right, next up, Texas Tech. All right, so last year, I had them preseason-wise in my preseason top 25 last season. They didn't live up to that hype, okay? I got a lot of people even talked about them potentially being a playoff team last season, winning the Big 12. That didn't happen. Now, some of these teams, sometimes you'll see where, they have a good year and, they get a lot of hype in the offseason. They're supposed to be really good that season, and they aren't. But the next year is when that hits. So I kind of think that's what might happen with Texas Tech this season. You go back to last season, they played with Oregon. All right, they gave Oregon a run for their money in that game. They've got Taj Brooks back at running back, arguably one of the top 5 running backs in the nation. Their coach has done a good job as well, kind of in his history there. McGuire, it seems like he has Tech trending up. But toughest games this season at Arizona, at Iowa State, at Oklahoma State. All 3 of those games away is going to be a little difficult here. We haven't really seen that with any teams on here where they all have away games that are tough. All right, Utah coming over from the Pac-12. I think them and Oklahoma State are the clear top 2 teams right now, in my opinion. Cam Rising is back from his injury. All right, he has proven time and time again in the Pac-12 that he can be a winner, that he can win a lot of ball games at Utah, get them to double-digit wins, get them to a Rose Bowl. But they're coming to the Big 12 now, so how's that going to look in this conference? All right, toughest games at Oklahoma State. So they got to play at Oklahoma State. It's going to be tough because I think those are the 2 best teams, like I said. Arizona, jury's kind of out on them. And then Iowa State, they've got a lot of upside. But Utah got a lot of love in y'all's comments. We'll get to those here in a minute. But there's really no reason why Kyle Whittingham and Cam Rising can't just run this conference this season. All right, last but not least here on my list, West Virginia. All right, Neil Brown got himself off the hot seat last year. Coming into last season, his seat was very hot. I was kind of rumored he was going to be fired last year, but Garrett Green, really good season, helped get him off the hot seat. Green is back. All right, arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, especially dual threat wise. Really fun to watch. We're going to know a lot about them early. All right, Penn State that week is going to be key for West Virginia and for the Big 12, because if West Virginia can, number 1, play with Penn State, number 2, beat Penn State, that's going to really benefit the Big 12 going further into somehow getting 2 teams in the playoff, because that's going to prove that, hey, we can play with the Big 10. We can, because Penn State's probably going to be a playoff team this year. That's going to prove to everybody, hey, the Big 12 deserves more than just one shot at this thing in the playoff. So that game's going to have a lot, as well as Iowa State at Iowa. Those 2 games are going to mean a lot going forward for the Big 12 this season. But Penn State at Oklahoma State and Kansas State. And speaking of Neil Brown, before I forget, you think back to last year, this offseason, Mark Stoops almost took the A&M job. If he would have left to go to A&M, I think Neil Brown was probably the next guy at Kentucky. But that didn't happen, so he's back at West Virginia. All right, so moving on to your guys' comments here. All right, so again, I asked you guys on Twitter, in the community, on Bleacher Report, through email. So my email is always open if y'all want to email me when I ask these questions. Or you can always shoot an email in to be listed here. I asked you guys in the Discord. I asked you guys a ton of different places. All right, who do you think can make the college football playoff out of the Big 12? We got a ton of different responses here. Got a lot of love for Arizona, a lot of love for Utah, a lot of love for Kansas State. But we're going to read through all these real quick. Then we'll get started. If you haven't shot in yours yet, join me down in the comment section. Let me know who you think can make the big college football playoff out of the Big 12. All right, starting off here, Bodie says Arizona. All right, so Arizona getting some love. Like I said, I won't say completely skeptical. I think they are definitely talented, their roster-wise, but how is that coaching staff going to mesh with what talent they already have? Because it's hard to get a read on how good their coaching staff is because they weren't too successful at San Jose State, but that's a really hard job to win at, so kind of difficult there. All right, J.M. Jones says Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Utah, maybe Arizona, no particular order. All right, so he's got a few options there. K-State, Oklahoma State, Utah, Arizona. All right, so those are definitely in discussion for the top 4, I would say. Arizona, because like I said, the jury's out on them. Kansas State is the betting odds favorite for a reason, most likely. Then Oklahoma State and Utah are what I would say are the favorites right now to me. All right, Wyfero, if I'm saying that right, apologies if not. He says West Virginia. All right, so West Virginia getting a lot of love there. Again, Garrett Green should be able to keep them in almost any game. It's going to come down to their defense, though, on just, I would say, how good they really can be. All right, Harry says maybe Utah or Oklahoma State. All right, so Harry, I'm in agreement with you there. Scott, Oklahoma State, if their running back can put down the bottle. All right, so yeah, if you missed that, Ollie Gordon, I think got busted for drinking while driving. All right, fits right in with Georgia. All right, he might be transferring to Georgia tomorrow. We'll find out soon enough. Unfortunate situation there, though. B says the only one that matters is UC, so that's going to be Cincinnati. I don't see Cincinnati making an impact yet. I think they kind of missed the window on that. Like, they should have really tried to get into the Big 12 when they had Luke Fickell, because without him, it's going to be pretty tough. Lucas, probably Utah or Oklahoma State, maybe Kansas State. All right, so there we go. Oklahoma State getting a little more love. All right, Utah, Kansas State. Again, I think those are probably the clear-cut top three, but you guys had a lot of comments. Daniel, Oklahoma State or Utah, both teams' passing games are kind of meh, but their run game and defense is elite. Kansas State as a sleeper. All right, so at the top of this, clear three teams so far, I would say, are those three: Oklahoma State, Utah, and Kansas State. Definitely the top three. Danny says Oklahoma State. Doge says not us. That's Arizona State. All right. Arizona State, yeah, I think they obviously, yeah, not this year. It's not going to happen, but I think their coach can have success in the future. Like, it seems like he is going to do all right there, given some time. I really thought they'd be a lot better under Herm Edwards. It just never happened. All right, here we go. Judd says only one, the championship winner, probably Oklahoma State. Big 12 football is pretty weak, unfortunately. It's a basketball conference for sure. Hard to argue that. That basketball conference is absolutely stacked now with who all they added. But yeah, most likely I'm with you on just the championship winner getting in, because it's going to take a lot of help to get two teams in. Because like we talked about earlier, I don't know if I see many of these teams going undefeated through this. Like, they're probably going to beat the crap out of each other and almost cannibalize itself. Sammy, okay, Sammy loves to shoot in messages that have no relation to what's going on, but he says, I need a movie for my plane ride. What do I watch? Okay. Last two movies I watched, I'm going to give you two options here. Last night I watched I Know What You Did Last Summer. All right, so that's a horror movie that's kind of July 4th related, from the 90s, kind of screamish, kind of that type of movie. It was pretty solid, nothing great, but it was good. Other movie I watched recently, action movie Predators. All right, so it's probably one of the better Predator sequels. It might be the best Predator sequel, to be honest with you. Really action-packed. All right, if you're a fan of those type of movies, Alien, Predators, that type of stuff, Predator. I'd say it's the second best in the Predator franchise besides Predator. So let's go with Predators, actually. It's got Adrian Brody. Basically, they're all dropped in. There's like 10 action people. They're all dropped in, like a bunch of military people. They have to fight against the Predators. Good question. Hey, keep movie questions coming in anytime. I love movies. I love discussing that stuff. All right, Poppy, Champagne Poppy. All right, he says Arizona and Kansas. All right, so Kansas getting a little love here. And again, I wouldn't be shocked if they make a run. And, Daniels, if he can stay healthy, I think they definitely have the potential there, because that offense is good. Lance Leipold's good. And then Arizona, again, jury's out for me on them, but I wouldn't be shocked. Ash, Arizona or Utah. Looks like we're getting a lot of Arizona love on this page. Andrew, Arizona, Utah, Oklahoma State, Kansas all have a shot. So Arizona and Kansas slowly climbing up the leaderboards here. But again, Utah and OK State getting a lot of love. Dre says, don't sleep on Arizona. Don't forget about Dre. Kadeem, I like Kansas State a lot this year. That offense is going to be electric. Yeah, I'm ready to see them with Avery Johnson in a complete season. Like, it seems like he can run a little bit as well. So it should be pretty entertaining. All right, Nick, I bet Oklahoma State, Utah, or Kansas State. I doubt more than one team in the Big 12 gets in unless there's somehow another 10-win team that isn't a conference champ. So, yeah, it's probably going to take, like I was saying earlier with West Virginia and Iowa State, like, it's going to take some out-of-conference, because really they're the only two teams that play meaningful out-of-conference games against another P4 conference. If they can win both those games or keep them both competitive, Penn State's going to be a playoff team. Like, you can probably pencil that in. So If West Virginia can play with them, now I think Penn State handled them last year, but if West Virginia can play with them and then be good, it's going to help out the Big 12 a lot. Iowa State, not as much because that game's always going to be tough. It's kind of difficult to read too much into that one. All right, Drew, Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Arizona, Colorado. Well, okay, Colorado, maybe Kansas. So we see Colorado getting a little love here, their first love. I don't think they get too much love in these comments, if I remember correctly. They're talented. Shadur Sanders, Travis Hunter, but again, I don't know. Last year I wasn't too impressed, but they did beat TCU, though. Speaking of Colorado, Rationale says, according to NCAA 25, it's Colorado. That is true. I saw that. I don't really know how that happened. I'm guessing those two alone, Sanders and Hunter, just boosted their overall rating up. But hey, NCAA 25 coming out in a couple weeks. Dallas says Utah. All right, so Cam Rising, once again, back in the Big 12. If you don't remember, he transferred from Texas originally. Naz, Utah, and oh yeah, that one team, Utah. Okay, Naz, we get it. Zane says Utah, Kansas State, and if Colorado lives up to the hype, then they maybe could. All right, so Colorado, all right, slowly crawling up here. Again, I think they're talented, depending on if they can improve that defense and that O-line. Heck, who knows what can happen? Because like I said, as much hate as they get, they did beat TCU last year. John, Utah, and Kansas State. All right, looks like a misspelling on my part, probably. I don't know, I usually just spell these like y'all guys send them in, so I don't know. It might be me. All right, AD says, outside of the Big 12 champ, it's going to be difficult for another team to get in unless they are undefeated or have one loss heading into the Big 12 championship, i.e. no more than 2 losses with a stellar season. So, yeah, if, West Virginia loses to Penn State, then that's it. They run the Big 12, then they lose in the championship. That could definitely be good. They'd be a top 10 team going into that championship week, no doubt. Or if, Oklahoma State and Utah, let's say they split, one of them wins in the regular season, one of them wins in the championship, that could be a recipe for both of you to get in there. All right, Logan, list just slowly decreased to Utah, so he's not wrong here. A lot of Utah love in most lists. Drew, speaking of Utah, he says Utah. Andrew, Utah again. Utah and Kansas State probably, but Utah wins the Big 12. Tyler, it's going to be Utah, maybe Kansas State or Oklahoma State sneaks in too. So Tyler potentially sees multiple teams sneaking in the playoff for the Big 12. Greg, Utah, Kansas State, I think are tier 1 with a real shot. Then tier 2 with a maybe is Oklahoma State, Arizona, West Virginia, and maybe Texas Tech. So Texas Tech getting their first love here. Again, I wouldn't be shocked with Texas Tech. I know they were not as good last year, but like I said, they played with Oregon. All right, and we know Oregon was pretty successful last season, and Tech had a lot of preseason love last year. So a lot of times you'll see that. They're not very good when they get the hype, but that next season they really shoot up the leaderboards. Tristan, Utah, Arizona, Kansas State would be my top 3. All right, so Arizona and for Oklahoma State. All right, Arizona, Utah, K-State getting a lot of love with these comments here. All right, Riley, aside from Oklahoma State, my bad, my head's in the way. I think Kansas State and Utah are the favorites and have a best shot at the playoffs. Everyone's saying Central Florida, and haven't seen Central Florida mentioned. And West Virginia and Kansas are going to go, but I need to see it. But overall, I think OK State, Kansas State, and Utah, can make it in. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of UCF love here, as well as West Virginia. Dion, Oklahoma State, and maybe Utah. No Colorado love from Dion. Come on now, I know it's spelled different, but Alex says West Virginia. All right, Dr. Pepper, Dr. Football, I don't know. Kansas this whole season depends on their quarterback. It's probably Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, and everyone else. I'm not drinking the Iowa State Kool-Aid. So, yeah, there haven't been a lot of mentions, if any, of Iowa State. I had them on my list, but I haven't seen any love from them. Now, a lot of people aren't very high on Matt Campbell. I'm not saying I am as well, but I think Iowa State is a sleeper. George, UCF. All right, here we go. UCF slowly creeping back. Joe, UCF. Ezra, Jayhawks and UCF. Okay, Kansas and UCF. Rick says the conference championship game winner, so only one team going basically. Beckham, Kansas State, and maybe Utah. Jason, probably Utah and Kansas State. A lot of Utah and Kansas State love here. Jay, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, or Utah. Robert says, watch out for West Virginia. They got some dogs. Woo! Action Jackson, definitely Utah. They should run that conference for a bit. Yeah, it'll depend on I think Whittingham's a good coach. It'll depend on what they replace Cam Rising with after this season, probably, because they do lose their running back this season. I think he transferred to Arkansas. All right, Nick, I cannot imagine more than one Big 12 school making it unless the runner-up is at least 10-2, and that's if things play out favorably in other conferences. Yeah, you would definitely need some help, so you're going to need the ACC to self-cannibalize, which is possible. They're similar to the Big 12. Like, they're probably five. At best, they're getting 2 teams in. Then the SEC and Big 10 are both probably looking at, almost 4 or 5 teams each. So you're going to have to hope somebody takes a fall that's not expected. Because let's see, Big 10-wise, you got, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Michigan are all definitely in the argument to get in. As, like I said, even Iowa's a sleeper there, I think, to somehow sneak in because of their schedule. SEC-wise, you got Georgia, Bama, Texas, Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU, Tennessee. So, yeah, it's going to be tough to get 2 teams in, but I don't think it's impossible. But you are definitely going to need some help, or West Virginia or Iowa State to do their part. Stick says Utah easily. Robert, it's such a toss-up. I could see Kansas State, Utah, Arizona, Oklahoma State, and West Virginia getting the Big 12 spot, and potentially an at-large too. So, again, Robert sees potentially 2 teams going out of one of those teams, all right? So it's not out of the realm of possibility. Just could depend on who beats who. If they all split a bunch of games, it's going to be rough. Hummel says pretty much all of them. So, again, I do think I can agree with this, that the Big 12 is fairly wide open. Like teams not mentioned here, TCU could shock somebody, and make a run again. It's not insane to think, or Colorado. Dave says Utah should be the big dog. A lot of big dog talk here. All right, so that looks like Dave was the last comment. All right, so again, these responses are courtesy of Bleacher Report, Twitter, email, community comments, and the Discord chat. To reach me on any of these, whenever I put out a question like that, you can email me at agyt@gmail.com, DM me or comment on my Twitter post at AG on YouTube. I don't post too often, but every now and then I'll post a question or a poll. Comment in the community. All right, comment on my post in Bleacher Report community or join the Discord. The link is on my channel bio. But those are my Big 12 teams that I think can make the college football playoff, as well as the comments that you think the Big 12 teams that can make the college football playoff. But what do you guys think? If you haven't yet, or if you did, have you changed your mind? What do you think? Let me know. Who are the Big 12 teams that can make the college football playoff? Comment down below. Make sure to like this video. And most importantly, subscribe.